Alright, I've got the camera on rotate, so 88 GTI told me I'm recording in HD. What am I doing? Torching! I'm on the Corvair Central Forum as Ugly Truck. I don't have my light on. Shoot. So I wanted to remove my battery tray because it was rusted. And I thought it would be spot welded onto the body, but lo and behold, look at that. Under the undercoating and lots of sand, I found two nuts. So I heated them up with the oxyacetylene torch. And I wish I would have put my lamp on, but this is not the same YouTube app that I've been using. They come loose like butter. When I used to use it before I changed devices, there used to be a button you could turn the lamp on, I believe, while you were making the video, and you could pause it. This one just has one button and the counter runs in tenths or hundreds, I guess hundreds. So I'm just taking off these two nuts and there comes the battery tray. Look at that. And one of the guys on the forum asked me, or asked me, or axed the forum why his starter is acting up. And I said, you can take apart a GM starter from the early 60s until the mid 90s so easily. They're a piece of cake. Well, actually, late 80s, early 90s, they went to this metric Japan rare induction starter, blah, 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 blah. Too complicated for me. I like the old-fashioned ones. There we go. Okay. I wasn't going to restart this video and turn the light on. So look at this. The battery tray is all rusty. And all you got to do is take out two nuts and there it is. Huh. Wasn't that simple? Uh-oh. What surprises lay underneath? Not very much, just dust and rust. So, oh, it even has a little gasket here. What I'm going to do is put some cardboard here and sandblast my battery tray area in my Spider, because in a couple of weeks the Corvair convention, July 23rd to 28th, is taking place in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Like Daffy, was it Daffy Duck would say? Here's a battery tray from my 2003 Mercedes, and here's the battery hold down. I have a guy comes by sometimes, he likes to do odd jobs, so maybe he'll sandblast this Z28 wheel, which came from Canada, so it's a Z28 wheel. I found it in a pile of tires with a tree growing through it. Actually, no, it didn't come from Canada, but it's rusted. So if anybody wanted to know how to take out the battery tray from the early model Corvair, you just heat up the nuts with an oxyacetylene torch that you have to have, and spray it with water, which you have to have, and just undo the 7/16 nuts. And that's it. It's actually still got some paint underneath it. You never know what you're going to find. Maybe I'll install the alternator, battery on top of the alternator. I got some bungee cords. Eldorado. I should take that baby for a drive, huh? What a party barge. You could land an airplane on that hood. You can probably put a Corvair, the entire Corvair under the hood of that thing. So there's what's underneath. I think I had a bigger battery sitting on top of a couple of 2x4s, held in place with these nylon twist, what do they call those, zip ties? Alrighty, I've got my battery tray, battery hold downs that I've bent, two experimental models, drying on a cardboard box, and this place needs to be organized. I don't know if it'll get done in my lifetime. Oh, Corvair starter. Some fellow was asking how to fix a starter that drags. Well, you just take off the end cover. Don't break the bolts. They go all the way through to the nose. You take off the cover. This is a Corvair end cap. And underneath you'll find brushes, and sometimes the brushes wear right down. Those are easy to change. You can buy those at AutoZone or Rock Auto or wherever you buy your auto parts. You just pull this off, and there's the field coils. And the only thing that goes wrong with these, in my experience, 99.9% of the cases, if the brush is wear, you can sand this down, polish it up. You can buy a bushing to put in here, use a sharp, thin screwdriver to remove the bushing. They even sell undersized bushings. If your shaft is worn, this won't fit because this is a GM V8 or 6-cylinder starter. This is for a Corvair, which uses slightly smaller internals. And look at that brush, worn right down to the holder. But they still work. They just drag and the bushings get worn and the armature drags on the field coils. It's such a simple starter to rebuild. And if I have one here taken apart, there's lots of videos on YouTube. But if I had one here, you can take out the bushing in the nose, you can change the drive, the Bendix. It's got a one-way clutch like a transmission. It's only supposed to turn in one direction. And it should have some resistance, and you'll only learn that from experience, how much resistance it's supposed to have. They sell rebuilt ones, or you can buy a heavy-duty 7-roller or whatever they call them. There's another one. They're easy. They're so easy to take apart. They're all a little different, and you gotta play with it. If you have a spare starter, you can buy them at the flea markets for 10 bucks. Take one apart and just see what's inside. You can even disassemble the solenoid. Got a couple screws that hold it in place, and a couple of, I think one of these studs goes to a wire. You just disassemble it, wire brush the threads, and disassemble it carefully. And I've taken these apart. You polish up the stud here. It gets corroded from the disc. It's not very complicated. You can watch a video on YouTube. I'm just giving you a brief overview. Don't be afraid of these starters. They are low-tech. The ones that I can't do are these little miniature ones. And I've seen guys do them. You just have to have a little holder to hold the brushes in place when you set it back over the armature. But I've rebuilt all these. Same thing with the alternators. All the old GMs. There's the newer one they started using in the late 80s with that ball bearing instead of the needle bearings. But these old 100 amp Cadillac ones, what's funny is this Cadillac here, 78, the last of the big ones. And this is the last of the last. Whoa, baby, that's a big hood. This is the last of the last. The last few hundred of these were done up in this two-tone, sandy, creamy cafe au lait with a electric sunroof by American Sunroof Corporation and a thick padded vinyl top. Yep. And oh yeah, nice big fingerprint. And a smaller back window. There's probably a fiberglass filler panel in here. And a big ostentatious piece of stainless steel brush trim and a huge windshield. But, getting back to what I was just discussing, a little baby alternator. Look at this little thing. It's got the same alternator that I have on the Corvair. This thing should have a 100 amp monster like they used to have right here. This is what Cadillacs had in the early mid 70s. This monster with two mounting attachments. They use these on ambulances, and if you ordered the extra heavy duty alternator option, even some vehicles had a 2 alternator option, kind of sort of military or ambulances or fire vehicles. Here's the little GM. They call it a 10SI, I think. Then they had one that had a smooth exterior case. Then they went to a slightly larger so-called metric. Is this a 15SI maybe? Refers to the metric size. It's got a new rectifier. I'm not any kind of pro in how these work. I just know that, well, that one's got a, I think that's a pickup for a tachometer for diesel. 15SI I have marked on that. You can go to Wikipedia. There's lots of information. So this is the smallest one. Then they went to the smooth style. I don't know why the difference. Then they went to the somewhat larger style, and they reinforced the back where the bearing rides because they were having trouble with the bearings breaking. I suppose if you run a rebuilding shop, you know all these intricacies. Then they went to this one here that's got these cutouts. I'm not sure why. Extra cooling. Then they went to the plastic fan. And this one doesn't have the reinforcements. Look at that. The bearing is sticking out quite a bit. This case is deeper, and the bearing is reinforced. I was talking to a guy that rebuilds them. He said, oh yeah, they had a heavier duty version. I suppose if you rebuild 100 a day, you'll learn all the ins and outs to see what comes back. And then they went to this more modern metric style that I put on the turbo weasel. It's got a needle bearing as opposed to the similar vehicle miniature. This is what the turbo weasel had. This piece of crap here with a roller bearing, and they catch fire. My buddy in Moscow, yeah, Russia, has a K5 blades from Canada. He converted it to a stick shift, and boy, you can do a lot of work on that thing, fabricating stuff. What with the the Russian ruble going down in value. I think Germans use the krona. Anyways, they used these in the late 80s on GM products. And it's kind of surprising that it doesn't have this one, this monster. It has this little puny, this might even be a 37 amp. Let's see if I can read the 37 amp. What a joke! What a joke. Come on, focus, baby. Come on. 37 amp. What does a generator put out? 20, 18, 15, 22 amps? 37's big for a Corvair. Some guys put 100 amp on. If you've got air conditioning, you need it. And all kinds of gewgaws and accessories and a rear defroster and power seats and power windows. But imagine freaking full-size Cadillac, the last of the big ones, with a 425, which used to be a 500, and then became a 368, then became the 864 electronic shut-off, blah, blah, blah. And what's even stupider is this alternator only runs off the fan. You see that? The crankshaft runs the water pump, and the air injection reactor pump, AIR, injects air into the exhaust. There's the oil filter, little baby oil filter, mounted on an external housing like Buick's. So the crankshaft runs the water pump and the air pump, and then the water pump, and only the water pump, runs the alternator, which Cadillac copied when they went to the 4.1, 4.5, and that just puts a hell of a strain. That pulley should go down to the crankshaft. I don't know why it doesn't. This thing's got a replacement air conditioning compressor, remanufactured, I'll put my glasses on, remanufactured for General Motors, and it is junk. It's way too hard. So I think this remanufactured is at an A6, the monster that lasts forever. This one's already had a replacement, and it's junk again. Oh yeah, it's bound up. Wonder what the problem is. My father used to drive these cars way back when I was a kid, and changing the thermostat was always a chore. Look at that bolt. It's underneath the oil drain, the sump drain for the compressor. How do you get to that bolt? What a spot. I guess when the time comes to change this air conditioning compressor, I'll put a new thermostat in, maybe a 180. What's this got for a radiator? Let's see what we got here. Does not have the extra cool with the tubes that are closer together. Oh, it's green. It's got a 1, 2, 3 row, otherwise known as a 3-row core. It's nice and green, but it's low. Maybe I'll put some thermocure in here. Clean this baby out before I send it off wherever it goes. And the battery hold down is sitting above the battery. That's supposed to be tight to the battery. Oh yeah, it's held on with a zip tie. Yeah, there was some type of sheet metal battery hold down here, but it's gone. It's got this rinky-dink on-off switch. Heavy duty, but I don't know. I'll have to fix a few things up, and the battery cable goes to the frame. You think it would go to the engine block behind the alternator, directly to the engine block? What's missing here? Little rubber boots missing on the back of the alternator on the hot. Well, this thing will have to have a little going over. It's not rusty. I had a body shop come by here yesterday to look at the SF sub. He's only going to do the passenger side damage. He's not doing my tailgate. I wish Pisser would do it, even though he's 300, 500 kilometers away, 300 miles away. Pisser won't do my Suburban. Alrighty. The tools are all nice and organized, and I got junk on the top, and I got a dash-mounted clock. I got junk. Alrighty. Anything else you want to see here? A rusty Corvair engine from Billy. I'm not sure when I'm going to see him next. He wants to go to Dwayne's junkyard in September. Maybe he'll work on my Tornado that's been sitting at his house for 2 years or going on 3 years. Alrighty. I got to work on this. Sandblasting. I even have a sandblasting cabinet. I've had this cabinet since the early 80s. Sounds like 30 years to me. It's never been hooked up. Sat on a friend's porch for years and years. Sat in the back of my shop for years and years. We'll get her done. Or something. TGIF. All right, enough babbling. I got work to do.